The buzzing of my phone jolted me awake at 3:17 a.m. Not the usual buzz of a text or call, but that distinct pattern of a security alert. In my groggy state, I almost dismissed it, but something made me look closer. The notification was from an app I'd never installed, Secure Track Alert, location data accessed. My name is Riley, and that notification was the first crack in the foundation of my perfectly ordinary life. I sat up in bed, careful not to wake Eric. He was sleeping soundly beside me, his back turned to my side as usual lately. The blue light from my phone cast strange shadows across our bedroom walls as I investigated the mysterious app. It wasn't visible on my home screen, but buried deep in my settings, I found it, Secure Track. Running quietly in the background for God knows how long. What the hell? I whispered, my fingers trembling slightly as I tapped through the unfamiliar interface. A map appeared, showing my movements from the past week, my daily drive to the high school where I teach, my Thursday coffee run with Sarah. Even my secret trip to that jewelry store where I'd been planning to buy Eric's anniversary gift. The bedroom suddenly felt too warm, too small. I slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway to the kitchen, passing Zoe's room where my 14-year-old daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her mother's world was starting to tilt on its axis. Under the harsh kitchen lights, I dug deeper into the app. There were more than just location tracks. My text messages, call logs, even my internet history had been monitored. Each discovery felt like another punch to the gut. Who would do this? Why? My hand shook as I reached for a glass of water. The house was dead quiet except for the soft hum of our refrigerator, making the whole situation feel even more surreal. I jumped when my phone buzzed again, another alert. Secure Track Alert, audio recording in progress. My blood ran cold. Audio recording? I frantically searched through the app settings until I found a folder labeled Recordings. The newest file was from 2 days ago, my conversation with Sarah at the coffee shop. I don't know, Sarah, my own voice played back through the phone speaker, tinny and distant. Eric's been different lately. Working late, always on his phone. I quickly stopped the playback, feeling sick. Someone had been listening to my private conversations. Someone had been tracking my every move. And given that this app needed physical access to install, the sound of footsteps upstairs made me freeze. They were heading toward our bedroom's ensuite bathroom, just Eric getting up to use the bathroom, like he did most nights. But for the first time in our 15 years of marriage, those familiar footsteps made my skin crawl. I quickly closed the app and deleted the alerts, my teacher's instincts kicking in. Don't show your hand too early. Gather evidence. Make a plan. My students would probably be shocked to know their Shakespeare-quoting English teacher was capable of such calculating thoughts. Back in bed, I laid awake listening to Eric's steady breathing, my mind racing. The man sleeping next to me, the father of my child, my partner of 15 years, what was he hiding that made him need to track my every move? Or was I the target of something bigger? One thing was certain, I couldn't confront him. Not yet. Not until I understood what I was dealing with. Tomorrow, I'd start digging. Tomorrow, I'd begin unraveling whatever web of secrets had been spun around my life. As I finally drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. In my exhaustion, I almost missed it, a text from an unknown number. Be careful what you look for, Riley. Some truths are better left buried. Morning came too quickly. I'd barely slept after discovering the spyware, but I forced myself through the motions of our usual routine. The kitchen filled with the smell of coffee and toast as I packed Zoe's lunch, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Eric came downstairs in his crisp blue suit, the one he always wore for important client meetings. He barely glanced at me as he poured his coffee into his travel mug. Big meeting today? I asked, keeping my voice casual while studying his reaction. Yeah, probably won't be home for dinner. He didn't meet my eyes, focused on stirring his coffee with mechanical precision. The Morrison account needs extra attention. The Morrison account. Right. The same excuse he'd used 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I wanted to scream, to demand answers about the app on my phone, but instead, I just nodded and turned back to making Zoe's sandwich. Mom, have you seen my USB drive? Zoe bounded into the kitchen, her dark hair still wet from the shower. The blue one with all my coding projects? Check the living room, I said. You were working there last night. Zoe paused, looking between Eric and me. She'd always been perceptive, too smart for her own good sometimes. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she noticed the distance between us, the careful way we avoided touching as Eric moved past me to grab his briefcase. Dad, you promised to help me with my computer science project this weekend, she said suddenly. Remember? The one about digital privacy and security. I nearly dropped the knife I was holding. Eric's shoulders tensed visibly. Sorry, sweetheart, he said, his voice tight. Something came up at work. Maybe next weekend? Zoe's face fell, but there was something else in her expression. Suspicion, maybe? Right. Work. Again. Eric kissed her forehead quickly, then headed for the door. Love you both, he called out, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. After he left, Zoe turned to me. Mom, what's going on? What do you mean? I busied myself cleaning up breakfast dishes. Dad's been weird lately. And you? She hesitated. You look like you haven't slept. Plus, you're washing that same plate for the third time. I set the plate down, forcing a smile. Just work stress, honey. You know how it gets during final season. Mom, I'm 14, not 4. Zoe crossed her arms. I know something's wrong. I heard you up last night. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Another secure track alert. I snatched it up before Zoe could see, but not before catching a glimpse of the message. Audio recording saved, kitchen, 7:15 a.m. I need to get to school early, I said, grabbing my purse. Teacher's meeting. Will you be okay taking the bus? Zoe's face closed off. Sure. Whatever. The drive to school was a blur. In the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and found Sarah's number. We'd been friends since college, and she worked in IT security. If anyone could help me understand what I was dealing with, it would be her. But before I could call, a new text arrived from the unknown number. Careful who you trust, Riley. Sarah might not be the friend you think she is. My blood ran cold. How did they know I was about to call Sarah? Unless... I looked around the parking lot, suddenly feeling exposed. The spyware must have access to my phone's camera too. A knock on my window made me jump. It was just Dennis from the English department, looking concerned. You okay, Riley? Meeting's about to start. Yeah, coming. I grabbed my things, mind racing. I couldn't trust my phone. Couldn't trust my husband. Maybe couldn't even trust my best friend. But worst of all, I was starting to see cracks in my relationship with Zoe, the one person I was trying to protect from all of this. As I walked into school, another text arrived. Smart girl, your daughter. Maybe she should look into that computer science project more carefully. Lots of interesting things to learn about digital privacy these days. It wasn't just a threat anymore. They were dragging my daughter into this. And that was my breaking point. I found Marcus Lee's office tucked between a laundromat and a Chinese takeout place. The private investigator's weathered face matched his worn leather chair as he reviewed the screenshots I'd taken of the spyware app. Secure Track Pro, he said, sliding his reading glasses off. High-end stuff. Not something you'd find on the regular market. Can you trace it? He nodded slowly. Already did. Purchase was made 6 weeks ago through a shell company. But here's where it gets interesting. He turned his computer screen toward me. The buyer used your home address for billing. My stomach lurched. Eric. Thing is, Marcus continued, clicking through several documents. The shell company's been busy. Regular payments to a rental property in Oakwood Heights. Nice place. Way too expensive for a single person unless someone else is helping with the rent. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Bingo. He pulled up a photograph that made my world tilt sideways. Eric, leaving the building with a woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than me, stunning in that effortless way that made me suddenly aware of every wrinkle around my eyes. His hand rested on the small of her back with familiar intimacy. Vanessa Reed, Marcus said quietly. Works at Eric's firm. Junior partner, fast-tracked for promotion. My phone buzzed. Another secure track alert. I ignored it, focusing on the dates beneath the photos. These are from when he said he was working late on the Morrison account. There's more. Marcus hesitated. The spyware. It wasn't his idea. Based on the email trails I found, Vanessa pushed for it. She's been encouraging him to make a clean break. A clean break. My voice sounded strange, distant. From you and Zoe. He slid a folder across his desk. These are copies of everything I found, including. He tapped one document. A consultation with a divorce attorney. Last week. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright. The smell of Chinese food wafting through the wall made me nauseated. Why the spyware then? If he's planning to leave anyway? Insurance, maybe. Or control. People do strange things when they're living double lives. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Having fun with Marcus? Wonder what Eric would think about his wife meeting strange men in secret. I showed Marcus the message. His expression darkened. They're watching you right now. Probably through your phone's camera. He grabbed a post-it note and scribbled something. This is a burner phone number. Use it to contact me from now on. And Riley? His eyes met mine. Be careful. People who use surveillance like this. They're not playing games. Walking to my car, another text arrived. TikTok, Riley. How long before Zoe finds out her mother's sneaking around too? I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were trying to gaslight me, make me doubt myself, make me feel guilty for investigating their betrayal. My phone rang. Eric. Hey, his voice was casual, practiced. Just checking if you can pick up Zoe today? Meeting's running late. Meeting. Right. I wondered if Vanessa was sitting next to him right now, maybe running her fingers through his hair the way I used to. Actually, I heard myself say, I have a meeting too. With the Morrison account. The silence on the other end was deafening. The Morrison account? His voice cracked slightly. Yeah. Funny thing about that account, Eric. They closed their business 6 months ago. I started my car. But hey, enjoy your meeting. Say hi to Vanessa for me. I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding. Through the windshield, I caught my reflection, pale, scared, but something else too. Something harder. My phone lit up with his call again. I declined it, then pulled up the SecureTrack app. 2 could play at this surveillance game. If they wanted to watch me, fine. Let them see what happens when you back a teacher into a corner. Time to pay Vanessa Reed a visit. I didn't make it to Vanessa's apartment that day. Instead, I found myself sitting in my classroom during lunch, staring at a stack of unsigned permission slips for tomorrow's field trip. When Zoe appeared in my doorway. You missed breakfast again, she said, dropping her backpack by my desk. And Dad didn't come home last night. I forced a smile. He texted. Late meeting. Stop. Zoe's voice cracked. Just stop lying to me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as we looked at each other. My daughter's face had lost its childhood softness somewhere in the past year, replaced by sharp angles and knowing eyes that saw too much. I found something on Dad's laptop, she continued, pulling out her phone. Remember when he asked me to help organize his work files last weekend? My stomach dropped. Zoe. There were emails. Lots of them. To someone named Vanessa. She placed her phone on my desk, screen up. He's planning to leave us, isn't he? Before I could respond, a student appeared at the door. Mrs. Thompson? Principal Warner needs to see you. He says it's urgent. In Warner's office, I found Eric waiting alongside the principal. My husband wore his courtroom smile, the one he used when he was about to destroy someone's credibility on the witness stand. Riley, Warner began, looking uncomfortable. Serious allegations have been made about inappropriate contact with a private investigator during school hours. And there are concerns about your emotional stability affecting your teaching performance. I felt the trap closing. Eric had beaten me to the punch, spinning the narrative his way. Of course he had. He was a lawyer. This was what he did for a living. I'm concerned about you, honey, Eric said, his voice dripping with practiced concern. The paranoid accusations, the secret meetings. This isn't like you. Let me help. Help. Like he'd helped by installing spyware on my phone? Like he'd helped by planning our divorce while playing happy families? Mr. Thompson suggests taking a leave of absence, Warner added. To sort things out. My phone buzzed. A secure track alert, probably recording this whole conversation. Recording how they were trying to paint me as unstable, paranoid, unfit to teach. Unfit to parent? I have documentation, I said quietly, of everything. Eric's smile flickered. Including the spyware you and Vanessa installed on my phone. The shell company. The apartment in Oakwood Heights. I turned to Warner. And recordings of every conversation I've had in the past 6 weeks, including with students and their parents. I wonder how the school board would feel about that level of privacy violation. Warner's face paled. Privacy violation? I'll email you the evidence, I said, standing. But right now, I need to talk to my daughter. She found your emails, Eric. The ones to Vanessa about leaving us. Eric's mask cracked. Zoe found. Yeah. So while you're trying to destroy my career to cover your tracks, our daughter is sitting in my classroom trying to understand why her father's abandoning her. I walked out, leaving them stammering behind me. In the hallway, my phone buzzed again. Not secure track this time, but a text from Marcus. Got something big. Vanessa's not who she claims to be. Meet ASAP. Back in my classroom, Zoe was still there, working on her laptop. Lines of code scrolled across her screen. What are you doing? I asked. Fighting back, she said, not looking up. Did you know most spyware has exploitable backdoors? Dad really should have researched the product better before buying it. I watched my teenage daughter's fingers fly across the keyboard, her face set in concentrated determination. She looked so much like me at that moment, not the scared, gaslit version of me from the past few weeks, but the stronger version I used to be. The version I needed to become again. Mom? Zoe finally looked up. I found something else in the app's code. Something bad. Really bad. I don't think this is just about Dad's affair anymore. My phone buzzed one final time. A new message, not from the unknown number this time, but from Vanessa herself. We need to talk. Your husband isn't the only one being blackmailed. Meet me tonight? It's not just spyware, Zoe explained, her laptop screen casting a blue glow across her face in Marcus Lee's dimly lit office. It's part of something bigger. Look at these network connections. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the code. These IP addresses. They're routing through law firms across the state. Dad's firm isn't the only one involved, I said, remembering Vanessa's text about blackmail. How many, Zoe? 17 so far. All using the same spyware package, all connected to a central server. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. And get this, they're all handling high-profile divorce cases. Marcus whistled low. Surveillance footage, private conversations, location data. It's a goldmine for divorce settlements. My phone buzzed. Vanessa again. They're watching. Don't trust Eric. Meet me at Riverside Park, 30 minutes. It's a trap, Marcus said, reading over my shoulder. Probably. I grabbed my coat anyway. But she's scared. You didn't hear her voice in those recordings Zoe found. Mom, wait. Zoe turned her laptop toward me. Look at this email thread. Vanessa tried to back out 3 weeks ago. The next day, someone sent her this. The attachment showed Vanessa leaving a building I recognized, the women's shelter where I volunteered. She was helping a young woman inside, both looking over their shoulders. Her sister, Marcus said quietly, been hiding from an abusive ex for 6 months. Vanessa's been helping her stay off the grid. Until now. The pieces clicked into place. They're using her sister as leverage. Mom? Zoe's voice shook slightly. There's something else. Remember that college fund Dad started for me last month? My stomach dropped. What about it? The money. It's not mine. It's being funneled through shell companies, the same ones paying for the spyware. Dad's helping them launder money. The room spun slightly. Eric wasn't just having an affair or spying on me. He was part of something much darker, something that could destroy not just our marriage, but his career, his freedom, everything. My phone buzzed again. A video this time, showing Zoe walking home from school yesterday. The message below it was simple. Back off or she's next. They're bluffing, Marcus started, but I was already heading for the door. Mom, stop. Zoe called after me. We need a plan. I have one. I turned back, seeing my daughter's worried face, so much older than her 14 years. I'm ending this. Tonight. Not alone you're not. Zoe grabbed her laptop. I can hack their network, shut down the spyware remotely. Give you a window. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than you meeting Vanessa alone? She stood her ground, chin raised defiantly. They're already threatening me. At least let me fight back. Marcus cleared his throat. Kid's right. You need backup. I've got a friend in the FBI's cybercrime division. One call. No. I thought of Vanessa's sister, of all the other people being blackmailed. Not yet. If we spook them, people could get hurt. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with first. My phone buzzed one final time. A photo of Eric entering a building I didn't recognize, followed by TikTok. Your husband's about to make a deal that can't be undone. Choose wisely. I looked at my daughter, this brilliant, brave girl who refused to be a victim. At Marcus, who'd become more than just an investigator. My allies in this mess. Okay, I said finally. Here's what we're going to do. Zoe, you and Marcus work on accessing their network. But you stay here, where it's safe. I'll meet Vanessa, find out what she knows. And then? Marcus asked. I thought of all the lies, the manipulation, the threats against my daughter. And then we burn it all down. Every last bit of it. As I left the office, I heard Zoe's fingers already flying across her keyboard, and I smiled grimly. They thought they could threaten a mother's child? They were about to learn exactly how dangerous that could be. Riverside Park was deserted when I arrived, except for Vanessa sitting alone on a bench near the water. She looked different from the photos Marcus had shown me, smaller somehow, more fragile. They're watching, she said without looking at me. But Zoe's program worked. We have about 10 minutes before the spyware comes back online. I sat beside her, keeping my distance. Tell me about my husband's deal. It's not just Eric. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a USB drive. The firm's been running this scheme for years. They install spyware on their own clients' devices, gather dirt on both parties in divorces, then use it to manipulate settlements. The money laundering is just a bonus. My phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. Mom, something's wrong. Dad's not at the office. The message cut off as a familiar voice spoke behind us. I really wished you'd stayed out of this, Riley. Eric stepped out of the shadows, and he wasn't alone. Two men in suits flanked him, their expressions cold and professional. The thing is, Eric continued, moving closer, you were never supposed to find the spyware. That was Vanessa's mistake. He shot her a disappointed look. She got sloppy. Like you got sloppy with the college fund? I stood, positioning myself between him and Vanessa. Money laundering through our daughter's account? That's low, even for you. It's called protecting our future. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Everything I did was for us. The firm's offering me partner, Riley. Real power. All I had to do was prove my loyalty. By spying on your own family? By showing I understand how the game is played. He gestured to the men beside him. Now we can handle this quietly. The firm's prepared to be generous. A clean divorce, full custody of Zoe, a comfortable settlement. All you have to do is walk away. My phone vibrated again. A single message from Marcus, FBI en route. Stall him. And if I don't walk away? Eric's face hardened. Then things get complicated. For everyone. He pulled out his phone, showing me a live feed of the women's shelter, including Vanessa's sister, and maybe even that bright future Zoe has in computer science. Would be a shame if she got caught hacking corporate servers. You'd threaten your own daughter? The words tasted like ash. I'm protecting her, teaching her how the world really works. He stepped closer, voice softening. Come on, Riley. Take the deal. We can all walk away from this. Behind me, Vanessa made a small, broken sound. I thought of her sister, of all the other families torn apart by this scheme. Of Zoe, watching her father reveal his true nature. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. This ends tonight. I pulled out my own phone, turning it toward him. On the screen, a live stream played, Eric's entire confession, broadcasting directly to Marcus's FBI contact and backed up to secure servers. Eric's face went white. You didn't come alone? I finished. Neither did you. Flashlights suddenly illuminated the park as FBI agents emerged from the darkness. Eric's professional friends disappeared like smoke, leaving him standing alone as agents converged. Riley, please, he begged, all pretense gone. Everything I did was for us. For Zoe. No. I watched as agents cuffed him. Everything you did was for yourself. My phone buzzed one final time. An unknown number. This isn't over. The firm protects its own. I looked at Eric being led away, at Vanessa crying with relief as agents assured her about her sister's safety. At the life I'd built crumbling around me. They were right. It wasn't over. The firm would retaliate. My career might be finished. Our savings were probably gone. And somewhere in Marcus's office, my teenage daughter had just watched her father choose power over family. But standing there in the dark, watching Eric's world collapse, I realized something important. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to see what's worth saving from the ashes. My phone buzzed again. Zoe, Mom, you okay? No, I wasn't okay. But for the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what I was fighting for. The holding cell at the federal building wasn't what I expected. Eric sat there in his expensive suit, somehow looking both powerful and pathetic under the fluorescent lights. 2 FBI agents stood outside, but they'd given us privacy for this conversation. You could have taken the deal, he said quietly. We could have kept our family. Our family? I placed the USB drive Vanessa had given me on the table between us. Let's talk about family, Eric. Let's talk about the 23 other families your firm destroyed this year alone. His jaw tightened. You don't understand how things work in my world. I understand perfectly. I slid printouts across the table, bank statements, emails, surveillance logs. You chose power over people, money over morality. And now you're choosing your firm over your daughter. Leave Zoe out of this. You brought her into this when you used her college fund to launder money. My voice stayed steady, even as my hands shook. When you threatened her future to protect your scheme. A knock at the door made us both jump. Zoe stood there, Marcus right behind her. I hadn't expected her to come, had tried to protect her from this moment. But the determined look in her eyes reminded me so much of myself. I want to talk to him, she said. Eric's face crumpled. Sweetheart. Don't. Zoe sat beside me, her laptop open. I found something in the spyware code. Something Mom doesn't know about yet. My heart stopped. Eric's face went pale. The program wasn't just recording conversations, Zoe continued, her voice trembling slightly. It was fabricating them. Creating fake evidence to use against your client's spouses. And Mom? They were building a case against you too. She turned the laptop toward us. Audio files filled the screen. Doctored conversations, manipulated photos, a complete fabricated history of inappropriate behavior with students. Insurance, Eric whispered. In case you ever discovered. In case I ever threaten your precious firm? The rage I'd been containing finally boiled over. You were going to destroy my career, take Zoe away from me? The firm required leverage on everyone involved. Even me. He reached for Zoe's hand, but she pulled away. I never wanted to use it. But you would have, Zoe said. Just like you used Vanessa's sister against her. Just like you're using everyone. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I saw Vanessa being led in by more agents, her face tear-streaked but determined. Behind her came a parade of suited men, senior partners from the firm, their facades of power crumbling as federal agents escorted them in. They're all turning on each other, Marcus said from the doorway. The whole house of cards is coming down. Eric stood abruptly, desperation in his eyes. Riley, please. I can still fix this. The firm has connections, resources. Stop. Zoe's voice cut through his pleading. Just stop lying. Mom found the spyware, but I found the truth. And I'm the one who cracked their encryption. Me. Your daughter. The one you were ready to sacrifice. She stood, gathering her laptop. I used to think you were the smartest person I knew. Now I realize you're just another bully who thought he could control everyone through their secrets. She turned to me. Can we go home now, Mom? Eric reached for her again. Zoe, everything I did was for yourself, she finished. Mom protected me. You just protected your power. As we turned to leave, Eric called out one last time. What happens now? I looked at my daughter, this amazing person who'd grown stronger through all this pain. At Marcus, who'd become a true friend. Even at Vanessa through the window, who'd finally chosen truth over fear. Now, I met Eric's eyes one last time. Now we rebuild. Without you. Walking out, Zoe slipped her hand into mine. Behind us, Eric's world continued to unravel, but ahead of us stretched something new, a future built on truth instead of secrets, strength instead of power, love instead of control. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from the school board, position secure. Evidence of firm's manipulation clear. When can you return to teaching? I smiled, squeezing Zoe's hand. We had a lot of healing ahead, but for the first time in months, the path forward was clear. 6 months later, I stood in our new apartment, watching Zoe set up her computer station in what used to be our dining room. The space was smaller than our old house, but somehow it felt more like home. Mom, Zoe called out, excitement in her voice. The cybersecurity program accepted me for their summer workshop. I moved to look at her acceptance email, remembering how different things had been half a year ago. The trial was still ongoing, but Eric had pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against the firm. The scandal had rocked the legal community, exposing similar schemes at law firms across the state. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Coffee tomorrow? Sarah's coming too. We need your input on the shelter's new security system. That had been unexpected, how Vanessa had transformed from perceived enemy to ally. After everything settled, she'd thrown herself into helping other women escape controlling relationships, using her insider knowledge of surveillance tactics to strengthen the shelter's protection protocols. Think fast. Zoe tossed me a small package. Inside was a USB drive shaped like a key. It's clean, she added with a grin. I checked. We could joke about it now, but those weeks of discovering the spyware had changed us both. Zoe had channeled her pain into purpose, becoming the youngest intern at Marcus's new cybersecurity consulting firm. And I, Professor Thompson? A student's voice called from my laptop. Right. Office hours. Even through video chat, teaching felt different now. Better somehow. More real. Just a minute, I called back, then turned to Zoe. Dinner at 7? Sarah's bringing that pasta you like. Can't. Meeting Marcus and his FBI friend about the workshop curriculum. She paused, then added softly, Dad's sentencing is next week. The air thickened slightly. We'd both received letters from Eric, apologies, explanations, promises to do better. They sat unopened in my desk drawer. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. You thought you won, but power always protects its own. I showed it to Zoe, who was already typing. Traced it. Just another angry ex-partner from the firm. Want me to forward it to Marcus? No. I deleted the message. Some people never learn that real power isn't about control. The doorbell rang. Sarah, early for our prep session. We were presenting at next month's educational conference about digital privacy in schools. Turns out my experience had value beyond just survival. Coming. I called out, but Zoe was already opening the door. She and Sarah had grown close, bonding over coding and their shared love of terrible science fiction movies. Hey, warrior women, Sarah said, dropping bags of takeout on the counter. Ready to change the world? I looked around our new home, at Zoe's workspace where she helped others protect their privacy, at the conference materials spread across my desk, at the friendship that had grown between Sarah and Vanessa as they worked to strengthen the shelter's security. You know what's funny? I said, grabbing plates. When this all started, I thought it was about revenge. About making Eric pay for betraying us. But it wasn't, Zoe finished, setting up her laptop. It was about choosing who we wanted to be after the betrayal. Sarah raised an eyebrow. When did you get so wise, kid? When my mom showed me that strength isn't about having power over others. Zoe smiled at me. It's about helping others find their power. My phone buzzed one last time. Marcus, got that teaching position approved. You start the cybersecurity awareness program next semester. Zoe's curriculum suggestions were brilliant. I looked at my daughter, this amazing person who'd grown not despite our challenges, but because of how we'd faced them together. At Sarah, who'd become more than just a friend. At the life we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Some scars never fully heal, but they remind us of our strength. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about building something better from the ruins they left behind. All right, I said, opening the takeout. Let's change the world.
While I lay in bed feeling weak and ill, Paul, my husband, grinned and remarked, "I only married you because you're the boss's daughter." I glanced at the gloves and scarves I had painstakingly made for him, now thrown away as if they were unimportant. He appeared so disappointed in me, and I knew I had to wake him up to the truth. His comments hurt. The idea of him realizing how mistaken he was in believing that everything was going his way made me laugh. Kelly Riley is my name. Paul and I have been wed for 6 years. Despite the fact that we are childless, we have been living together in harmony. Paul spends a lot of time away from home for business. He usually tries to spend time with me on his days off, which helps me deal with the loneliness I sometimes experience. My father, who was Paul's supervisor at the time, introduced us. Paul advised me to become a stay-at-home wife after we were married. I supported Paul and had plenty of time for myself, so I thought it was a fantastic idea. I began exercising, learning to sew, and forming friendships with the neighbors. I experimented with a variety of pastimes, but knitting and sewing ended up being my favorites. I used to knit Paul gloves and scarves every winter. I wasn't very good at it at first, but I improved with time. Paul eventually assured me that they were just as excellent as store-bought ones. I became even more passionate about sewing after hearing his lovely remarks. One day, I hoped to sew with our unborn kid. Paul grinned when I brought it up to him and said, "Maybe I'll join in and learn when the time comes." I felt content in my life during times like this. When Paul had days off, I always made sure to spend time with him and take good care of the house. We lived well because of his high pay, and I undoubtedly appeared extremely fortunate to others. I didn't have any grievances and assumed that we would keep living in silence like this, just the two of us, hoping to have a kid someday. However, things began to shift around 3 years ago. As usual, I was waiting for Paul to get home one evening. I suddenly felt lightheaded and passed out. Paul hurried me to the hospital once he got back from work. I was resting in a hospital bed when I woke up. I found out that my ailment wasn't mild, and that I would have to live with it for the rest of my life from Paul's talk with the doctor. Although fortunately not life-threatening, the doctor cautioned that it may occur again. They advised me to remain in the hospital till I felt somewhat better. Paul informed me, "It looks like you'll be in the hospital for a while, but it's okay," after noticing my concern. "Anytime I have some free time from work, I'll stop by. Together, we overcome this." My uneasiness subsided as he talked while holding my hand. Though there was no genuine reason to believe such, I had faith that everything would be well with my supporting hubby at my side. Paul kept his promise and came to see me virtually every day after that. He attempted to lift my spirits, held my hand, and inquired about how I was doing. He got me my favorite stitching supplies after I informed him that the hospital days were tedious and long. Sitting together, we would stitch while discussing little events from the day. It was quite enjoyable to teach my awkward spouse how to sew, and it temporarily distracted me from my ennui. For over a year, these joyful times in the hospital continued. As part of our annual custom, I knit him another scarf last winter, but I observed that Paul was coming in less and less after that. Now, I counted myself lucky if he appeared once every several weeks. I initially assumed that he was simply overworked, so I kept myself occupied with stitching. In order to surprise him the following time he visited, I even began knitting a pair of gloves. I was hoping to give Paul the gloves as a present when I was released from the hospital, because the doctor said I would be able to return home before the end of the year. I made those gloves with all of my love and work in the hopes that they would help us get through our time apart. However, I was devastated by Paul's response when he eventually paid me a visit after a protracted hiatus. Instead of being pleased when I gave him the gloves, he regarded them icily and said, "Are you still producing these? Now they're just starting to bother people." Then, without hesitation, he gave me the divorce papers and the scarf I had crocheted for him the previous year. It appeared as though he had never even worn the scarf. "How come you haven't been in the hospital for 3 years? I can't continue to care for you, but I've heard you'll be released shortly," he remarked. "We should get a divorce." I looked down at the divorce papers when I heard Paul's words. He had already signed them. I thought to myself, so this is where we've ended up. To be honest, ever since he stopped visiting me regularly, I had considered the possibility of divorce more than once. I tried to push those thoughts away, convincing myself that he was just busy with work. But deep down, I knew better. The Paul I first knew would never ignore me, no matter how much work he had. If his job had really gotten busier, he would have told me. When he started disappearing without any explanation, I had a feeling this was coming. That's why, when I asked him why he wanted a divorce, I wasn't as upset as I thought I'd be. I wasn't trying to hold on to him. I knew I had probably become a burden to him. If the kind Paul I first knew was now asking for a divorce, I had to face the truth. I figured I didn't really have a choice, but I was still curious. He had once promised we'd get through this together, so I wanted to know why he had changed his mind. When I asked, Paul responded, "Isn't it obvious? Ever since I married you, all I've had are problems. I'm sick of the scarves and gloves you give me every year. I only married you because you're the boss's daughter. How can I be expected to deal with you being sick on top of everything else?" He laughed in a way that felt like he was mocking me. It was as if all the joy I had found in our life together, all the talks we had about love, happiness, and loneliness, meant nothing to him. He made it clear that he thought I was a fool for believing in those things. He continued, "Who even wears a handmade scarf anymore without feeling embarrassed? Getting gifts like that is just annoying." As I listened to him, I glanced at his neck and noticed a high-end scarf I didn't remember giving him. Compared to the scarves I made for him, this one was obviously of much better quality. There was no point in comparing mine to that one. It made me wonder if he had ever actually worn any of the things I made for him. He must have hated them all along, and I just never realized it. After I was hospitalized, my father retired from the company. Shortly after that, it meant Paul no longer had to pretend to care about me to stay in my father's good graces. Plus, having a sick wife might have been a convenient excuse for him at work. In the first year of my illness, he made a big show of visiting me whenever he could, balancing work and showing concern for me. I could easily imagine my father, before he retired, praising Paul at work, saying how hardworking he was while also taking care of his sick wife. Paul had built this image of being a caring husband, and his coworkers respected him for it. But now it seemed that once my father retired, Paul didn't see any value in me anymore. The part of me that had once been useful to him had been realized, and now he no longer needed me. When I shared my thoughts, feeling sick inside, my husband looked surprised. Then he casually admitted, "Well, it did make work easier. When I mentioned you, everyone felt sorry for me and treated me well. If I worked a bit of overtime, They praised me for being responsible. And if I wanted time off, all I had to say was my wife is sick. He said all of this without a hint of regret. He had used my illness to his advantage in ways I had never noticed. As for the promotion I'm up for, he continued, I mean, the others are idiots. But I do have to thank your illness for that. I listened quietly with my head down. When I finally looked up, I saw a smug grin on his face. The man I once loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. This was his true self. Well, if I was able to help you, I guess that's good, I said. We probably won't see each other again, so take care. I handed him the divorce papers. He had no more use for me after that and quickly turned to leave. And just like that, our divorce was final. After he left, I cried softly to myself. After some time, I was discharged from the hospital and went back to my parents' house. When my father heard what had happened, he was furious. I never thought he could be that kind of person, he said, his voice raised. But for me, it didn't matter anymore. I calmed my father down and told him that once I cleaned up the house, I wanted to move back in with my parents. They understood and told me to do whatever made me happy. For now, I decided to live with them. Before moving back in with my parents, I wanted to visit the house where I had lived with my husband. But when we got there, I found that the front door lock wasn't working. My parents and I exchanged confused looks and decided to ring the doorbell. A stranger answered the door. Feeling puzzled, I asked him about the situation. He told me that he had bought the house a while ago and had been living there for a few months with his wife and child. They seemed happy. My parents were even angrier after hearing this, but I didn't want to cause any trouble for the new family. I bowed my head and quietly left. However, I couldn't just leave it like that, so I called my ex-husband right away. On the phone, he answered casually, "Oh yeah, I sold the house while you were in the hospital. Keep the money from the sale as like compensation for me. It was my house to begin with, so you don't really have any complaints, right?" I couldn't help but sigh at how indifferent he was. I wish he had told me sooner. From what the new owner said, the house had been sold quite a while ago. My husband probably put it up for sale about a year ago, around the time he stopped visiting me. Even if he had planned to divorce me, selling the house without discussing it with me was just outrageous. Our divorce had already been finalized when we signed the papers, but since I was still in the hospital, we had agreed to talk about compensation and dividing assets after my discharge. We had a meeting planned for next week, but he decided to act on his own. It was unbelievable. What made it worse was that he didn't even think he had done anything wrong. So I calmly told him over the phone, "You really don't understand anything, do you?" "Huh? What do you mean?" he asked, sounding confused. "I'll explain everything in detail next week," I replied and hung up the phone. I smiled at my worried parents and then turned to my father. "I need a favor," I said, sharing my plan with him and asking him to help me get ready for what was coming. "I understand," my father said, his face serious but supportive. "I've already prepared the necessary documents. There's not much time before the meeting next week, but we'll manage." I could see a hint of regret in his eyes, probably because he had once recommended my husband to me. But his anger at what my husband had done seemed to drive him to help me as much as he could. I thanked my father and waited for the day of the meeting. The thought of seeing my husband's reaction made me smile for the first time in a while. With my father's help, we got everything ready for the meeting. We decided to hold the discussion at my parents' home. My parents and I sat together on one side, and my husband sat alone across from us. I'm sure he knew my parents were hurt by the divorce, but it didn't seem to bother him anymore. He didn't show any sign of respect toward them. and his face even held a hint of a smile. His attitude was arrogant, as if he didn't have anything to worry about. "I'm the victim here," he began, "but I'm not going to ask for too much. The money from the sale of the house will be enough." He spoke as if he was being generous, like he was doing us a favor by not asking for more. Seeing his smug attitude, my father's face turned red with anger. I gently placed my hand on his to calm him down. There was no need for us to get upset. We knew that in this discussion, my husband was the one who would be at a disadvantage, not us. "There's something important we need to talk about first," I said, keeping my voice calm. I spoke up, and my father handed over a document. It was proof that the land where the house stood was owned by him. "Yes, the house was in your name." "There's no question about that," I said. "But the land the house was built on belongs to my father, and he still holds the title to it." "That's clear from this document, right?" My husband's expression changed slightly, his brow furrowing. "So what?" he replied. "The house was mine. No one has the right to complain. Do you think you can get back at me with that?" He chuckled as if he found the whole situation ridiculous. I continued calmly, "It's true that the house was in your name, and legally you could sell it. I'm sure you checked all of this before you sold the house, and there's no legal issue with your actions." My husband seemed confident, knowing there was no problem from a legal standpoint. "However," I said, "for the family who bought the house, this is a big issue. You sold the house, but since we still own the land, my father can charge them rent. That would definitely cause them trouble, don't you think? The situation isn't what they were led to believe." I paused before continuing. "Now, neither my father nor I intend to charge them rent or make them leave, but we also don't plan on just giving away the rights to our land for nothing. In that case, we would sell the land to the family. We wouldn't demand monthly rent, but it would be a problem for us if they didn't buy the land. My father gifted that land to us to live on, not for it to be handed over to strangers," I added. "And if they don't buy it, the family could sue you." As I said, the deal wasn't what they expected. Can you imagine their frustration? They thought they were buying their dream home, only to find out the land isn't theirs, and they now have more expenses. After we obtained proof of my father's ownership of the land, we went straight to the new family and explained the situation. Thankfully, they understood and agreed that if there was any trouble, it was the seller's responsibility. If things didn't go well with the negotiations, they made it clear they would sue my husband. When I saw my husband's face turn pale, I knew he finally understood the gravity of the situation. He realized that no matter what, this was going to cost him a lot of money because of his mistake. In a trembling voice, he asked, "What should I do then?" I smiled and calmly responded, "The family can buy the land from us, making them the full owners of both the house and the land. Then you would have to cover the cost of the land. This way, everything can be settled smoothly, and there would be no need for the family to sue you. Once they own both the house and the land, all the issues will be resolved. However, since they weren't informed about the land price when they bought the house, they will likely make you pay for it. That's not their problem to deal with, it's yours. The real issue is that the land is in a prime location, and its value could be higher than what you sold the house for. Even if you give up all your assets, it might not be enough. In the end, you could be left with nothing." I paused for a moment and continued. "Another option is for you to buy the house back and then pay for the land. Of course, you have to cover the relocation fee for the family living there. This would give you back both the house and the land, and you could try selling them again, maybe making some money. But after paying for everything, you probably won't end up with much, if anything at all. Whichever option you choose, you'll be at a loss," I added. "And let's not forget about alimony. Your actions have caused me a lot of mental distress, and I plan to ask for compensation for that. Keep that in mind. All this time, Paul had used me as a tool to help his career. Now that I understood this, I felt disgusted by everything he had done. I also planned to file for damages for the emotional harm he caused me, even though it might be hard to prove, and I might not win. Bringing up these issues was important, especially considering the situation he's in now. Paul, now cornered, didn't seem to have the ability to fully process what was happening. It looked like all these things could become his reality soon. My father, seeing the opportunity, added, "Even though I'm retired, I still have many connections at the company. I've been talking to some of my old colleagues, and they've told me what you've been saying about my daughter and how you've treated her. People at work have lost all respect for you." My father broke the news to Paul with a bright grin, and I could tell that he was now realizing how serious things were. He no longer cared about the money he made from selling the house without my permission, or the prestige he had earned by taking advantage of me. Now I continued, smiling and putting my hands together. Let's talk about what comes next. We must agree on the house, compensation, and asset distribution. I smiled at him now, and it was not the same grin I had ever given him. This time, I was feeling powerful and relieved, and my smile was brighter than it had been in a long time. Since our separation, I hope you understand that your assets will be decided in this meeting, I said. Paul's eyes welled up with tears, but he could only fake a chuckle. The ensuing talks worked in my favor. In addition to agreeing to give me alimony, Paul also promised to buy the land on which the house was located. In the end, everyone, aside from Paul, benefited from the deal when we gave the family who had purchased the house an explanation of everything. He lost everything. Paul's reputation suffered as a result of the company-wide rumors my father had fostered. Because of concerns from higher management, his anticipated promotion was postponed. Paul eventually lost his position in the organization as a result of the persistent rumors. Paul had quit, my father subsequently told me. You could call it karma, I suppose. When someone chooses to act, things that were acquired by taking advantage of others might go just as quickly. As for me, I now teach a sewing class and live with my parents. My lessons aren't very full, but with the help of the local ladies and kids that come, I've been able to make a respectable living. I've come to the realization that sharing what I love with others truly makes me happy, even if I was never able to sew with my own kids as I had originally hoped. There have been many difficult periods in life, but there have also been some pleasant ones. My parents' deaths when I was a child left me with a deep, lingering sadness. However, I was fortunate to be taken in by the elderly William couple who lived next door. They were the sweetest folks, and instead of treating me like a burden, they treated me like their own grandson. The most important thing was that, despite our lack of wealth, we were wealthy in love. When they passed away in a vehicle accident just before my 20th birthday, and while I was considering attending college, everything changed. All of a sudden, I was alone once more. They left me money for their suburban home and school. I sold it because it brought up too many memories, despite the fact that it was full of them. I used the funds to purchase a modest apartment in the city, near the university where I planned to get a degree in financial management. It was at a friend's party that I met Michael. He was carefree, enjoyable, and indifferent to the opinions of others. We clicked immediately. He spilled my drink after inadvertently bumping against me. I was more shocked than irritated when I remarked, "Hey, watch it." "All right, my bad," he added with a smile. "I'll take care of that." "What did you drink?" He said, 2 beers coming right up. When I replied, "Just beer." That was Michael, uncomplicated, direct, laid back. All night long, we discussed everything and nothing. We discovered that while we both like old movies, we detested sushi. He was pleasant to talk to, and I didn't want to say goodbye when the celebration was over. He proposed a year later. The two of us were watching TV together. Without a lengthy speech or elaborate motions, he took a ring out of his pocket and declared, "Marry me," while gripping the ring so firmly I was afraid it would shatter. It was so flawlessly plain and a bit untidy that I laughed, not because it was humorous. "You big goof, of course," I said. At first, marriage didn't really change anything. It just felt natural. We were just legally married and exactly the same as before. We took up residence in my little flat in the heart of the city. However, it made a significant difference to have someone with whom to share the quiet times. Life seemed whole for the first time in a long time, and evenings no longer felt so lonely. Marriage provided some solace, but life may startle you just when you think you're established. From the beginning, Michael's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jacob, were amazing individuals. They opened their comfortable suburban house to me. Their generosity was a comfort to my still stung heart after losing my own family, and I could understand where Michael got his easygoing demeanor. "We're so happy you're part of our family now," Mrs. Jacob would frequently say as she gave me a hard yet kind grip on my hand. "Thank you so much for making me feel so welcome," is what I would always say. We started hanging out with them on the weekends, enjoying lengthy conversations over steaming coffee and outdoor barbecues. Before it wasn't, life seemed straightforward, honest, and wonderful. For a year, Michael had to go out of state for employment. Although the timing wasn't perfect, it was a fantastic opportunity for his career. Mr. and Mrs. Jacob's health began to deteriorate shortly after he departed. Everything occurred so fast that one day Mrs. Jacob called and seemed very concerned. "We need your help, Anna," she replied in a shaky voice. "I apologize for troubling you, but things aren't going well. Mr. Jacob's condition is not good." I hastily gathered my belongings and made my way to their house. Seeing how weak they both appeared was painful. Having tubes for his treatment, Mr. Jacob, who had previously appeared so powerful, suddenly appeared tiny. I became accustomed to their routine, cooking and cleaning, while Mrs. Jacob concentrated on taking care of Mr. Jacob. I would read his favorite books to them in the evenings. Though his voice was weaker than previously, on good days he would gently remark, "Thank you, Anna," even though he would frequently nod off before I finished a chapter. I would console him by holding his hand while grinning and responding, "It's my pleasure." Mrs. Jacob was sitting at the kitchen table one day as I was making supper, and she appeared more worn out than normal. "Anna, I don't know how to say this, but we're having some problems," she began, trembling and wringing her hands. "The primary supplier, Mr. Jacob, is suddenly struggling." I set the knife down and focused entirely on her. "We're in a difficult place, sweetie. Would you think about leasing your apartment?" Mrs. Jacob looked down and added, "I hate to even ask, but maybe it will help us get through this tough time." She was obviously ashamed. I felt sad for them because of what she said, which demonstrated how dire their circumstances were. How could I say no to them after they took me in and made me family when I had no one else? I answered, "Of course, Mrs. Jacob," in an attempt to calm her concerns. "I will immediately take care of it." I immediately found someone to rent the flat, and I gave Mrs. Jacob the rent each month, plus extra for groceries and any expenses that weren't paid. On the worst days, I reminded myself that family is what keeps us together, despite the fact that my journey to work became a lengthy and exhausting drive. I could sense Mrs. Jacob's relief when she said, "You're a godsend, Anna," each time I handed her the money. Michael's calls were my sole solace. It seemed like a momentary getaway to hear his voice. "Jess, how are things going?" He would inquire, "Are you doing okay?" "We're managing," I would respond, forcing a grin into my voice over the static of long-distance talks. Not wishing to increase his concern, he said, "Don't worry about us." But when Shirley, Mrs. Jacobs' daughter from her previous marriage, unexpectedly showed there, everything changed. Suddenly, like a chilly breeze creeping in, the atmosphere in the home changed. Though I didn't know her well, I had seen how tight things became during her short, uncomfortable visits and had heard plenty from Michael. Long commutes to work and caring for a bedridden and increasingly ill Mrs. Jacob were already causing me stress. However, the tension only increased with Shirley present. She settled in and stated unequivocally that she intended to stay. After a long, difficult day, Mr. Jacob pathetically invited me over one evening. He spoke in a low, unsteady voice. He said, "Anna, please watch Shirley. She is a bad person." My gut twisted at what he said. I was unsure of what to look out for, but I assured, "I understand, Mr. Jacob." Mr. Jacob was right when he said that Shirley quickly took over. The initial indications came rapidly. Shirley was in the kitchen one morning, standing like a thundercloud at the breakfast table. She drank her coffee and gave me a disapproving look. She stated, "Just to be clear, I'm not here to cook or be a maid for anyone." Despite my amazement, I maintained my composure. I tried to maintain the calm by saying, "All right, Shirley. I can continue to manage everything. So far, I have been doing it." "Good, since I have nothing to do." She said, "This is Mom's house," and challenged me to do so. Shirley made sure everyone knew she was there from that day on, and not in a good manner. She left the empty boxes for me to pick up after ordering takeout for only her and her mother. I remained silent despite the pain because Mr. and Mrs. Jacob deserved to be at peace. One evening, Mrs. Jacob remarked, "Anna, why don't you stay and eat with us tonight?" with a touch of her former warmth. But Shirley interrupted me before I could respond. "Mom, Anna has been really busy today." As if to protect me, she said, "I think she wants to eat later." I was obviously not welcome. My to-do list grew, and the day seemed to drag on forever. Shirley's attitude permeated the entire household. She was using harsh language to turn her against me, and I could hear her talking to her mother late at night. Mrs. Jacob, who had been so kind, gradually changed. She gave me fewer thanks, and her expression grew austere. Mr. Jacob died a few weeks after that. Just in time to say farewell, Michael took a plane to the funeral. It was a comfort to have him there, even if the entire affair was depressing. It was nice to have him at my side during such a trying moment, especially because we hadn't seen each other in months. I saw Shirley being almost too kind and courteous to everyone at the funeral. Michael and I got a minute to ourselves after the service. He said, "How have things been while I've been away?" "It's been all right." I forced a grin and responded, "Everything is okay." I didn't want to cause him more anxiety because he was already dealing with plenty. "Are you certain?" He looked at me worriedly and remarked, "You seem a bit tired." I tried not to look him in the eye and dismissed it by saying, "It's just been busy helping out around here." Bringing up all the issues that were simmering beneath the surface wasn't the appropriate moment. Shirley stopped pretending to be the protective sister when Michael departed. I had to cope with her impolite and disrespectful actions once more. The entire atmosphere of the house shifted. Mrs. Jacob seemed aloof and chilly toward me. Perhaps this was how she dealt with her loss. Our conversations turned into orders, and I started to feel less like part of the family and more like an outsider. Shirley took control of the house, acting like she was in charge. She didn't care about anyone's feelings but her own. She would even barge into my room without knocking and go through my things like she was searching for something. One day, I was trying to find some peace in the garden when I noticed a box hidden among the bushes. Curious, I opened it and found my lingerie, jewelry, and watches inside. My heart sank. When I saw some of my clothes tossed nearby, I was furious. I grabbed the box and stormed back inside. Shirley was lunging in the living room, acting like she owned the place. "What the hell, Shirley?" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger. "You can't just throw out my stuff." She gave a cold, mocking laugh. "Hannah, you don't live here. You're just a guest and you're not wanted. You'd be better off in the garden or on the street. You're nothing more than a beggar." Her words stung like salt on a wound. I felt my whole body tremble. I turned to Mrs. Jacob, who had just walked into the room. "Mrs. Jacob, please tell her she can't treat me like this. This is supposed to be my home, too." I pleaded, my voice cracking. But the once kind Mrs. Jacob looked at me like I was a stranger. "This is Shirley's home now. Maybe you should find somewhere else to stay." Her words hit me harder than I could have imagined. Standing there, holding the box, my heart pounded. In that moment, the home and family I thought I had fell apart. I stayed despite everything because I had made a promise to Mr. Jacob on his deathbed to take care of his wife and make sure Shirley didn't take over. But it felt like Mrs. Jacob was becoming more like Shirley every day. Her looks grew colder and her words harsher. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Mrs. Jacob lost her temper. "What are you even doing here, just sitting around not helping?" she snapped, her voice full of contempt. I tried not to let her words get to me, but I still replied, "I'm doing my best to keep things running smoothly." "Best? More like you're just using everyone," she sneered before leaving the room. Her comments hurt. I had rented out my apartment and given almost all the money to Mrs. Jacob, so I knew I wasn't just freeloading. Besides, I did most of the chores while Shirley only complained and criticized. She was the one living off her mom's pension, yet she never let up. "What is my brother even seeing you?" She would taunt through the thin walls every night. I kept reminding myself of the promise I made to Mr. Jacob, biting my tongue to hold back my anger. But the house had become a hostile place, and I felt trapped. One evening, I came home early from work and sensed something felt off. They didn't know I was there, and as I walked into the living room, I heard Shirley and Mrs. Jacob arguing. "We need to make her sell her apartment," Shirley said, her tone cold and selfish. "You know how much we could use that money." "Yes, but how do we convince her?" "Anna won't just give it up," Mrs. Jacob replied, sounding frustrated. "Mom, leave it to me. I'll gently force her to do it. We can finally live the life we deserve after she signs it over," Shirley continued, her words brimming with dishonesty. It was shocking to learn that they were planning to steal my only source of money. As I stealthily made my way to my room, my heart was racing. They want to rob me of everything. After that, it was obvious that I couldn't stay. I had to go. I hastily packed my belongings with unsteady hands. In that house, everything seemed like a ticking time bomb. They didn't deserve to be said farewell, so I didn't bother. I phoned a cab to drive me to the train station after sneaking out the back door. As I sat on the train to Michael's state, my thoughts were racing. I pondered if he would sympathize with them and comprehend. The unknown of what was ahead was just as terrible as the fear of what would happen if I stayed. I scanned the countryside as the train traveled, feeling both anxious and determined. Michael was shocked to see me standing there with my luggage when he opened the door to his flat. He appeared both relieved and inquisitive. "Michael, something is wrong." "Not at all," I said, my voice faltering as I expressed my concern. I followed him to the couch. Talk to me, my love. What's happening? He begged. I filled him in on everything, including how Shirley had returned, how things had become worse at home, and the last straw, their scheme to force me to sell my flat. Prior to this, I didn't want to bother him while he was working, but now I let all out. Michael's expression darkened as I talked, his fists contracting and his jaw hardening. His voice was a mixture of wrath and concern by the time I was done. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Said the man. I didn't want to exacerbate the situation. I felt silly as I said, I thought I could handle it. Anna, screw you. He got up and started to pace, saying, you shouldn't have had to deal with that alone. I can't believe my mom and Shirley treated you like this. He came to a halt and gave me a nasty glare. My wife is not treated this way by anyone. He took out his phone and stated, no one. As I saw him call his mother, my heart was pounding. She hardly picked up the phone after it rang twice. Michael's shoulders were stiff, but I couldn't hear her side of the discussion. This must end, Mom. I will not tolerate that since I am well aware of it. You can disregard our assistance if Shirley remains, or if you don't begin to treat Anna with dignity. No more cash. Nothing, Michael stated in a stern and uncompromising tone. There was silence following a brief but contentious disagreement. Michael gripped the phone tightly. At last he responded, all right. I've made my decision, if that's yours, and hung up. He turned to face me, and his face softened. He came over to give me a hug and said, it looks like it's just us now, sweetie, but that's all we need. Leaning against him, I felt protected by his arms, which kept me secure from the mayhem. I said, just us, realizing he was correct. It seemed fine somehow, now that we were alone. We spoke about practical topics late into the night, including our budget, my work-from-home schedule, and what our lives would be like without having to deal with Shirley and his parents. It seemed like a new beginning. Just the two of us were embarking on a new chapter in our lives. No matter what, we're all in this together. You and I are the only ones against the world, right? I said. With a self-assured smile, Michael answered, right. I grinned back, feeling stronger with him at my side. The days that followed were hectic. Fortunately, when I asked, my supervisor agreed to let me work from home. We set up my home office in the corner of Michael's living room after he assisted me in moving my belongings out of storage. Although it wasn't flawless, it felt like ours and was comfortable. I felt like a ghost from the past when I received a call after a calm week. Mrs. Jacob was the one. Her once kind voice suddenly sounded aggressive and desperate at the same time. Why haven't I gotten paid this month, Anna? She seemed desperate as she replied, you know how much we needed. I was momentarily silent. After everything, how could she have the audacity to ask this question? I'm sorry, but after all that's happened, you really expect me to keep sending money? More astonished than furious, I asked. In the background, Shirley's piercing voice could be heard stating, she's just being selfish. Get her to send the funds. When Mrs. Jacob eventually exclaimed, but we're family, she sounded both imploring and incensed. Yet I could imagine her looking distressed. No, family doesn't treat each other like that, I firmly stated. Before she could respond, I said, goodbye, Mrs. Jacob, and hung up. I was shaken by the call, but Michael was there to console me. Putting his arm over my shoulders, he murmured, you made the right choice, Anna. It's time they learned to take care of themselves. Soon later, we received a surprise. We learned what I had anticipated. The news was fantastic, and all of a sudden, the future appeared promising and full with opportunities. We made the decision that it was time for me to sell my apartment and purchase a modest suburban house close to a reputable school for our child's upbringing. Mrs. Jacob called again while we were organizing the transfer, but her voice was different this time. Her voice was nearly frantic. I apologize for all of this. I had nothing left after Shirley stole the money and forced me to sell the house. Could I join you and Michael live? I felt a shiver run down my spine at her plea, and I could hear her voice shaking. My determination was put to the test. Mrs. Jacob, you took this course of action when you joined Shirley in opposing us. You could have made a different decision, I firmly stated. Despite my internal pain, I spoke quietly and tried to maintain a steady tone. Mrs. Jacob, you have a kind heart, but everyone has to make decisions. I added, I can't just forget what happened, even though I know you made mistakes. Can't you forgive an old woman for her bad decisions? She begged. I let out a sigh, recalling all the suffering her decisions had brought about while also feeling sad for her. I have forgiven you, but that doesn't mean I can let you back into my life, I responded. You have to live with the consequences of your actions, just like I have. After that, I blocked her number and hung up. We proceeded with our plans and purchased a modest, cozy home with a garden where our children could play. I was drinking my coffee and reading the newspaper carefully one sleepy Friday morning when I noticed the headline, "Local lady arrested for big fraud scheme." I saw a photo of Shirley in handcuffs and looked dejected. To be honest, I was a little relieved as well as shocked. As I held out the newspaper, I remarked, "Look at this, Michael. This is Shirley. She was sent into custody for fraud." With a serious attitude, Michael accepted the paper and read the tale. That's a lot to process, wow. However, I can't claim to be shocked, he remarked. She made her choices, and now she's facing the consequences. With a sense of finality I didn't realize I needed, I said. We later learned from acquaintances that Mrs. Jacob was living in a tiny apartment and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Together with her other costs, Shirley's pension was insufficient to pay off the debt she left behind. Have you heard about your mom? One evening while they were around for a cookout, Michael's friend Em inquired. Michael said, "Yeah, I've heard," while he flipped burgers on the grill. His voice had a hint of melancholy, yet it was also resolute. She made her choices, and this is the reality now, Em agreed. I simply wanted to let you know. The evening continued after that as the talk turned to more lighthearted subjects like sports and business. Life, like us, had gone on. The happiness we experienced upon Megan's birth was immense. When I became a mother, everything changed. Our ambitions and objectives were altered, and some old scars were even healed with fresh love. Can you believe she's ours? One night, when Michael and I were watching Megan sleep in her cradle, I muttered. He wrapped his arm over my shoulders and said, I know, in a kind manner. She's perfect, he added in a soft voice. We marveled at every tiny thing Megan performed during the day, including her giggles and smiles. All of the negative memories seemed to vanish when she was around, leaving only positive ones. She was our little miracle. Simple yet full with little moments of happiness, each day gave our family a sense of fulfillment. Megan would attempt to chase butterflies while we laughed on our stroll in the park. We used to play games and read books at home on cold evenings. Michael and I became closer every day because of our love for our kid. Michael was at work one sunny day, and Megan and I were relaxing in the garden. With the lovely scent of roses in full bloom, I watched her play with her toys. A glimpse of the life we had created together. It was the ideal moment. Megan exclaimed, "Look, Mommy," while displaying a flower she had chosen. I smiled at her and said, "That's beautiful, sweetheart." I reflected on the path that had led us to this point. Despite the difficulties we had encountered, they brought us to this serene and joyful location. I was incredibly appreciative of Michael's love, support, and the strength we shared. Michael held my hand across the table when we sat down to supper that night. His eyes were full of affection as he remarked, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "We have," I said, firmly grasping his hand, "and I wouldn't change a thing." With optimism and confidence, we looked to the future, believing that we could overcome any obstacles as a team. Our family was strong, our love was unshakable, and our hearts were full of pleasure. In order to create a life full of love, joy, and limitless opportunities, we made sure to treasure each day. Simply put, it's absurd that someone as uninteresting as you is getting married before me. Even the groom and guests will tell you straight out that you look prettier in that old outfit. Beside my torn bridal gown, I heard my sister's scathing remarks. As her elder sister, I couldn't allow her to continue acting in this way, even if it broke my heart. I was resolved to express my happiness to her and make her feel horrible about her actions. Amy is my name. Scott and I recently filed for marriage after 5 years of dating, and I'm 30 years old. Our wedding is almost approaching. It has been difficult to prepare the wedding invitations, choose the cuisine, and choose the floral arrangements. But I keep going because I see it as a chance to thank everyone who has helped us. My wedding gown is one item on which I have been concentrating particularly. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience to wear a wedding gown, and since I was a young child, I've wanted to wear a pure white one. I occasionally question whether I made the proper decision after spending a significant amount of money on it. That outfit has always been your dream, Amy, and I think it fits you the finest. Scott informed me you've been saving for it for a very long time. I'm grateful, Scott. Yes, I will confidently wear the outfit I selected because it's a special day, I said. The dress I chose is stunning. It was designed by a well-known designer and had a ton of tulle and lace. I get thrilled on our wedding day just seeing myself standing next to Scott at the ideal location. It's like a dream realized. However, things haven't always gone as planned in my life. Did you actually get married to Scott, Amy? He'll regret it, don't you think? My sister Lauren smirked. Lauren, that's not something you should say. Even as a joke, I responded. Lauren, who is 3 years younger than me, was relaxing on the couch when I went home. Despite her pretense of humor, she always knew how to say hurtful things. Lauren is being serious, and I know it. Scott is so handsome. He's way too good-looking for someone like you, she said. Lauren, you can't evaluate individuals by their appearance. I answered, marriage is about much more than appearances. Well, that could seem plausible coming from you. Lauren said, I never imagined you would marry before me. Stop it, I shouted. Lauren is quite self-assured and works on her hair and cosmetics regularly to attract guys. She's the kind of person who constantly examines herself in the mirror. She has been making fun of me in public since we were little, saying things like, unlike me, my big sister isn't pretty. She seemed to need to be in charge all the time. However, despite her intense attention on appearance, I never felt inferior to her in other respects. She has never been a kind sister to me, and recently she has been acting even more strangely. Hey, Amy, do you recall Scott's recent visit to meet our family? You mean I was there too? Did Scott mention me? She inquired. I said, what do you mean? You have a really adorable sister. Or something along the lines of your sister is more beautiful and sophisticated than you, she remarked. I felt irritated. I said, I'm leaving in an attempt to leave our parents' home. Acting all high and mighty just because you managed to get married. Lauren murmured to herself as I was ready to leave. Despite the fact that you're still really ugly. Simply wait and see. Excuse me, did you say something? I responded. She said, just go home already. I didn't think much of it because this attitude wasn't new. Later on, however, things became more odd. Lauren arrived with our parents to see the day Scott and I had our pre-wedding picture session. Oh, so this is the dress you're going to wear on the big day, she said. Lauren, the shoot is about to start. Could you please move aside? I inquired. Lauren continued to roam about, unconcerned with anybody else, while the cathedral where the wedding would be held was being prepared for the solitary picture shoot I had initially booked. All right, I'll move. What's the big deal? Just because you're in a wedding dress, you're acting like you're the star, she said. Well, I kind of am the star today since it's my pre-wedding shoot. We need to move quickly, or it'll be a problem for everyone, I replied. She scoffed. Typical. You try to be liked by being so considerate, but really, you're just plain. And just so you know, that dress doesn't suit you at all, Lauren whispered to me, making sure our parents, Scott, and his mother couldn't hear her. Just as I was about to respond, she walked away. The photo session began, but her cruel words lingered in my mind, making it hard for me to smile naturally. As the pre-wedding shoot went on, my smile felt more and more forced. Are you nervous, Amy? Asked Scott's mother, my future mother-in-law. We had met many times, but she was always gentle and kind. I'm just having a little trouble smiling, I said. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's okay, you look beautiful in that dress. Take your time with the photos. You deserve to be admired for as long as possible, she reassured me. Her kind words helped for a moment, but Lauren soon ruined the mood again. Are you going to make trouble for your in-laws? I feel sorry for them having such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Who would want someone like you? Lauren said with a smirk. Lauren, please stop, I responded, trying to stay calm. At that moment, my future mother-in-law stepped in. She smiled warmly and said, It's so nice of you to come and support your sister, but this is Amy and my son's special day. Please give them some space. She gently took Lauren by the hand and led her to the corner of the venue. As the shoot continued, Lauren stood there with a sour look on her face, clicking her tongue in frustration, making the atmosphere tense. Maybe your sister feels like I've stolen you from her, Scott joked, trying to lighten the mood. I'm so sorry, I apologized, feeling the weight of Lauren's presence even more. It made the day feel exhausting, but eventually the shoot was done, and I started feeling more prepared for the big day. There's no such thing as being too prepared for one of the most important days of your life. As my wedding day approached, I double-checked everything to make sure it was perfect. Scott and I traveled from our new home to the venue, and when we arrived, we went to separate dressing rooms to get ready. Soon, the moment I had been dreaming of for so long would finally come. I would wear the wedding dress I had always imagined and vow eternal love to Scott. A childhood dream was about to become real. I felt a mix of nervousness and pure joy as I approached the door to the bridal dressing room. Just as I was about to open the door, it swung open from the inside. To my surprise, it was Lauren who stepped out, closing her bag with a smug look on her face. Lauren, what are you doing here? I asked, confused. Oops, I mistook it for the bathroom, she said, smirking. Is this really the bride's dressing room? It's so shabby, but I guess it suits you. With those cruel words, Lauren quickly left. It was strange for her to be here so early, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy about her odd behavior. I walked into the bridal dressing room and was shocked by what I saw. The room, which had been elegantly decorated to create a calm and peaceful atmosphere, now showed a terrible scene. My wedding dress, the one I had dreamed of, was hanging there, completely slashed and ruined. "What is this?" I exclaimed. The dress with its beautiful lace details was supposed to be mine. I stood frozen in front of the destroyed dress, unable to believe what I was seeing. Just then, the makeup and wardrobe staff came into the room. They saw me standing still, staring at the mess, and couldn't hide their shock. I asked them if anyone had been in the room, and they told me that my sister Lauren had asked them to leave, saying she was setting up a surprise for me. Could Lauren have done this? Why would she ruin my dress like this? As much as I didn't want to believe it, everything pointed to her being the one who did it. Her strange behavior ever since I got engaged and the way she had glared at me during the pre-wedding shoot made me even more suspicious. With shaky hands, I pulled out my phone and called Lauren. She answered right away. "What do you want?" Lauren asked. Trying to hold back my tears, I asked her directly, "Lauren, can you tell me what you were doing in my dressing room earlier?" "What? Didn't I tell you I mistook it for the bathroom?" "Have you already forgotten, or are you really that dumb?" She replied. "That's a lie. You ruined my wedding dress, didn't you?" I confronted her, my emotions rising. Lauren laughed. "What? Something wrong with the dress? It's pretty awful that you'd suspect me. Maybe it's just karma for your bad attitude. You sound like you're enjoying this. That just proves you did it. Why did you destroy my dress?" I demanded, my voice filled with anger. "Oh, what a hassle," Lauren said, sounding bored. "Do you have any proof that I did it? And honestly, isn't it weird that someone as plain as you is getting married before me? You probably look better in that torn-up dress anyway. Even the groom and the guests would agree with that." Lauren hung up the phone. I stood there, staring at the dress in front of me. It was beyond repair. The staff who had left the room earlier at Lauren's request kept apologizing over and over. But no matter how many times they said sorry, the dress couldn't be fixed. I kept telling them, "It's okay." But inside, I wasn't sure if anything was okay at all. I thought I wouldn't be able to go through with the ceremony. In the middle of all this stress and sadness, there was a gentle knock on the door of the bridal dressing room. "Amy, how's the preparation going?" my mother-in-law asked as she stepped in. She was bringing some refreshments for the staff, but the moment she saw the ruined dress, her face turned serious. "What happened to the dress?" she asked, shocked. I started to explain. "The truth is my sister." My mother-in-law listened quietly and nodded. "I see," she said. "But it's a good thing we prepared a backup dress just in case." "Backup dress? What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "I have a suggestion," she said, her usual calm tone replaced by a more serious expression. She laid out a plan. If I supported her idea, she promised to help make everything perfect. Thanks to her strategy, I found the strength to move forward with the wedding I had almost considered canceling. "Just watch, Lauren," I thought to myself. "I'll show you how happy and radiant I can be." Seeing my renewed energy, the staff got even more excited and worked hard to make everything perfect. My emotions were different from how I had felt that morning. I was now ready to face the wedding head-on. The magnificent chapel was set outside, and as the solemn music began to play, the large doors in front of me opened. My father was waiting there, and the aisle stretched out before us, leading to the altar where Scott stood waiting for me as I walked down the aisle with my father. I heard guests gasp in surprise. My father had tears in his eyes, and Scott, who didn't know what had happened with the dress, looked surprised as well. With my veil still on, I stole a glance at Scott's face, then quickly looked at the family seats. There was Lauren, expecting me to show up in a torn or badly prepared dress. Her expression was priceless. Her mouth was wide open in shock, and she couldn't move. I walked past her straight to Scott. After my father gave me away, I took Scott's hand. I noticed Lauren fidgeting with the handkerchief she was holding. We exchanged rings, shared our vows, kissed, and walked out to a shower of flower petals. As we passed Lauren during our exit, I saw her pulling on the handkerchief, which finally tore at her hands. This ceremony wasn't about troubling my sister. It was about sharing our joy. At that moment, I forgot all about Lauren and focused on the happiness of the day. After we finished taking group photos outside the chapel, we were directed to the reception venue. It was good that everything had gone smoothly. In the end, I was really surprised you chose such a beautiful dress, my husband said as we shared a few words before heading back to our dressing rooms. The atmosphere was light and happy as guests started making their way to the reception. Suddenly, I heard Lauren shout loudly, "Wait, why are you wearing such a nice dress?" Lauren pointed at me. "What's with that long veil, the tiara, and even your shiny chest? Why are you standing out so much? You're supposed to be less noticeable than me. You don't have the right to act so confident." Lauren's words were loud and full of frustration, even though she seemed to admire the dress at the same time. The dress I wore was indeed beautiful. It had a long veil made of high-quality lace, a glamorous tiara decorated with Swarovski crystals, and the silk fabric shimmered under the light. The full hem of the dress gave it a royal look, and the chest was delicately adorned with crystals too. It doesn't matter if I'm beautiful or not. Every bride has the right to wear a dress she loves and enjoy her special day. You always look down on me, Lauren, but who do you think you are? I shot back, standing my ground. Lauren scoffed. Everyone knows that beautiful people are above the ugly ones. Ugly people have a lower status. Look at me. I take care of myself, and I'm clearly more beautiful, she said, turning to the guests with a smug smile. The guests, including our parents, were shocked into silence. Seeing their reaction, Lauren took it as agreement and continued, "See, I'm definitely more beautiful, yet I don't even have a boyfriend, and my ugly sister gets married first. I can't accept this." Her anger flared, and she glared at me before suddenly lunging at me. "It's pitiful that someone as ugly as you would wear this. Take it off right now and apologize to the dress." She shouted. "Lauren, stop. This is an important wedding dress. It's borrowed from Scott's mom. It's the dress she wore at her own wedding. So don't touch it." I cried out, trying to stop her. Before Lauren could cause any more trouble, the venue staff and Scott quickly stepped in to hold her back. She struggled at first, but froze when she heard what I said. "Wait, so it's a second-hand dress?" She sneered. "So you were wearing rags after all. Treating something second-hand like it's special. You really are poor. Plus, getting rags from your mother-in-law. You're already being bullied, aren't you? No dreams, no hopes. Serves you right," she said with a cruel smirk. Her words stung, but I stayed calm, knowing that nothing she said could ruin my day. "I will not allow you to call this dress a rag." Scott's mother quietly intervened, stepping forward with a calm smile. "This dress is a haute couture piece, custom-made. It originally cost $500,000. $500,000? Lauren exclaimed, shocked. "The price of silk and Swarovski crystals has gone up since then, so it's likely worth even more now," Scott's mother continued. "We've had experts take care of it, so it's in perfect condition." Hearing this, Lauren's face turned pale. The mention of the actual price seemed to shake her deeply. "Why would you give such an expensive dress to my sister?" Lauren stammered. "Because Amy is kind and will make a wonderful bride," Scott's mother said gently. "It brings me great joy to know that my treasured wedding dress is being worn by my dear daughter-in-law." "That's not the point. Why was such an amazing dress prepared in the first place? Lauren pressed, clearly upset. She had probably assumed there was no backup dress when she ruined the original one. Scott's mother smiled slightly at Lauren and said, "Lauren, I noticed how you glared at Amy during the pre-wedding shoot, even after I asked you to give her space. I saw you looking at that dress on your phone and had a feeling you might try something." "I thought you were just an old lady," Lauren muttered under her breath. "Yes, but our family is well off, and we're very sensitive to other people's intentions," Scott's mother replied smoothly. That comment seemed to hit Lauren hard. "Wait, you're wealthy. So Scott is rich too. He's rich and handsome. Then why did he choose my sister?" Lauren shouted, growing more confused and frustrated. "Why did I marry Amy?" Scott said, joining the conversation with a shy smile. "I was planning to talk about it in my speech at the reception." He turned to Lauren, who was now red with frustration. "When I first went out with Amy, she suggested we split the bill." I was surprised. It was the first time anyone had ever suggested that she even wanted to split the cost of our apartment rent and the wedding expenses. What going Dutch? I don't get it. If Scott is rich, he should pay for everything. Amy, you should let a man take care of you. "That's why you're a flawed woman," Lauren criticized. Scott shook his head. "That's exactly it. Every woman I've dated saw me as just a wallet, but Amy didn't. She's truly independent, and I realized I didn't want to be with anyone else but her." He then continued speaking about other reasons why he loved me, standing firm in his words. Lauren clicked her tongue in frustration, clearly unhappy with the answers she had received. "I can't listen to this. It's boring, and I'm not interested in a reception where my plain sister is the star. Maybe I should just go home," Lauren said, venting her frustration. Then, as usual, she lost her motivation and relaxed her shoulders. This was typical of her. Either she'd cause a scene until she got what she wanted, or until she got bored. As her sister, I had always tolerated her behavior, but it was clear her personality hadn't improved as she grew older. I realized it was time to teach her a final lesson. Grabbing her arm to stop her as she yawned, I said, "This is a good time to tell you you'll have to pay for the dress you ruined." Lauren gasped and then laughed smugly. "Me ruin the dress? There's no proof. Why don't you save your bedtime stories for when you're asleep?" She shrugged off my hand and chuckled, clearly pleased with herself for ruining my chosen dress. But I stayed calm. It was time to show her what happens when someone tries to destroy another's happiness. Seeing how satisfied she looked, I smiled and said, "Unfortunately for you, everything was recorded on the surveillance cameras. I had them installed in the bridal dressing room. I'm even thinking about filing a criminal complaint for property damage. I hate the idea of having a criminal in the family on my wedding day." Lauren's smile disappeared instantly, replaced by shock and panic. "What? You have cameras? Since when do weddings have that? It's not an option at every wedding." I replied, "I had them installed just for today, and they'll be removed tomorrow." "How can you just install and remove things on your own?" "That's ridiculous," Lauren said, still in disbelief. "This venue is the wedding venue I own," I explained. "What? You're the owner? I thought you were just a plain office worker," she exclaimed, her shock growing. "Plain or not, it's true. I was an office worker until recently," I continued, "but my passion for wedding dresses and weddings grew, and I decided to open my own wedding venue. It wasn't just my savings that made it possible. Scott's mother, who is also an investor, supported me, helping me create a wedding venue for brides. This place, it's the one I manage." Lauren's face twisted with disbelief. "No way. I've never heard anything like this from Mom or Dad." I asked them to keep it a secret from you. I figured you'd think it was ridiculous for someone with my ugly appearance to run a company, I said. As Lauren listened, her expression softened. I could see the struggle in her mind as she tried to process everything I had just revealed. I have a lot of wealthy relatives, I mentioned. Lauren's eyes lit up. Oh, then you can introduce me to a rich man, right? Yay, she exclaimed, clearly missing the point. Lauren, do you really think we can continue as sisters after this? You tore up a dress that was special to me. I never want to see your face again, I said, my anger simmering. What? Why are you saying that? It was just a little prank. I already said I'm sorry, didn't I? Lauren's apology felt empty, and she acted like it didn't matter. Her careless attitude pushed me over the edge. A little prank. You think ruining something important to me is just a joke. I will never forgive you for this. It's good I have this beautiful dress from Scott's mom, but the one you destroyed was also precious to me. I'm definitely going to ask for compensation. Compensation? Are you serious? How much does a wedding dress even cost? I don't have any real savings. Lauren panicked. If you don't pay, I'll report it to the police. Did you really think you could bully your ugly, plain sister all your life and get away with it? That's no joke, Lauren. Grow up, I said firmly. My words hit her hard, and she collapsed into a chair, powerless. Our parents, who had been quietly watching, started crying. Their tears were different from the joyful ones they shed during the ceremony. Lauren's selfish actions had hurt them deeply, and I realized just how much sadness she had caused them. Amy is truly amazing. She's the kind of entrepreneur I'm proud to support. I'm lucky she wore my wedding dress and that I invested in her business, Scott's mother said warmly. Mom, that's my line. Please don't say that before I do. Scott joked with a smile. Watching Scott and his mom talk so casually, I felt a wave of relief. After sending Lauren home, we returned to the reception, which continued warmly despite the earlier drama. It ended up being the best wedding for me because I was able to strengthen my bond with Scott's family. After the wedding, our parents were furious with Lauren. They apologized to me for being too easy on her for so long and strongly condemned her actions. Our parents kicked Lauren out of the house. She rented a little apartment close to our parents' house since she was unable to shift jobs to pay for the outfit she destroyed. She was unable to avoid the rumors about my wedding since she stayed close to home. Because of our similar ages, word got out fast, and Lauren was the talk of the town. She was so angry that she moved out of state because her former pals would always shun her when she tried to get back in touch with them. She struggled financially as a result of her time and finances being depleted by the lengthy trip to work. She now leads a tight, constrained life, and all of her bonuses and income are used to purchase the clothing. She was once a self-assured trendsetter, but her lifestyle has radically altered, and she can no longer afford cosmetics or stylish clothing for work. Lauren now spends her days in silence, dressed in unkempt clothing, and occasionally looks at her coworkers with envious lust. Social media is her sole means of escape, but more people are turning away from her depressing messages. Scott and I are contentedly enjoying our marriage in the interim. He keeps himself occupied at work, and after my mother-in-law's advice, I've begun creating distinctive bridal gowns at our location. I've received encouragement from investors who see my passion for bridal gowns and tell me that if I love them, I can make dresses that brides will love. Even if it's a novel and difficult effort, creating the ideal garment with exquisite lace, silk, and tulle brings a unique thrill. I still get a little better every day when I look at the pictures of me wearing Scott's mother's dress when we exchange photos, even if the memory of the garment Lauren ruined still stings. Being present when a bride I've dressed celebrates the most joyous day of her life is the finest part. I now find weddings to be more joyful as a result of this. Every day, I'm grateful for Scott's affection and my mother-in-law, who helped me out when my dress broke and still helps me out at work. Surprisingly, I even feel a little grateful to Lauren. Her behavior only served to highlight my genuine passion for bridal gowns. When I met James, my life took a pleasant turn. In the past, I spent my days navigating through a series of corporate crises. But when I entered James's life, I was thrown into a world of real sweetness at his family's candy store, Sweet Sanctuary. Here, love and sweets coexisted harmoniously, and before long, I was running this quaint little shop's finances. As I entered the delightfully fragrant store, James would greet me with a smile that would light up the room. "Good morning, love." His warmth served as a continual reminder of my new, joyous mission, regardless of any underlying stress. I would reply, "Morning," while I sorted through the mail, which was primarily bills, which I had gotten really good at. This month, sales have increased. Trying to keep things positive, I would say, "That new chocolate line is really taking off." James would shrug nonchalantly in response. "Yes, that is all you are doing. I am still the candy in Mom's eyes." He would jest, but underlying his easygoing manner, I could feel a hint of strain. Patricia, his mother, would suddenly enter the store, bursting with joy and encroaching on personal space. "My darling James, you've surpassed yourselves. The store looks fantastic," she would say, giving him a thump on the back. Then her gaze would turn to mine, and her smile would slightly stiffen. "I see that Karen is still playing shopkeeper." I would sigh quietly while maintaining a courteous tone. "Patricia, good morning." In order to avoid conflict, I would respond, "Yes, playing shopkeeper is keeping us in the black." Patricia would wave her hand dismissively at my remark. "Numbers, numbers." With hardly concealed contempt in her voice, she said, "You should help my son with the real business and leave that to the accountants." James would interrupt before I could reply. "Karen is doing really great, Mom. She has a business sense, which is why we're doing so well." In a subtle but powerful show of support, he had wrapped his arm around me. Patricia would dismissively sniff. "Well, I guess what matters is that my boy is happy." She would then leap away, leaving a trace of her existence in her wake. James would sheepishly squeeze my side. He would whisper, "Don't let her get to you." I would pretend to grin. "I'm not. Let's just concentrate on the store, shall we?" And we did, giving it our all to turn Sweet Sanctuary into a little piece of heaven rather than just a candy store. That feeling of utopia lasted until I started to see some alarming indicators. Deliveries increased in often, but now they included pricey devices with frightening price tags instead of confectionery components. James, another package. One night when I was closing up the register and admiring a brand new device that was still in its box, I would inquire. James would exclaim, "Oh, that's the new phone I ordered," as he opened the package with obvious delight. "At the top of the line." I would wag my brow. "We have other priorities, don't we?" That odd noise has been coming from the mixer in the rear. James would dismiss my worries while focusing on his new toy. "Don't worry, Karen. We must also take care of ourselves, you know." I wanted to complain and remind him of the delicate financial balance we were in, but I refrained in the hopes of striking a balance between taking care of ourselves and maintaining our ambition. Even though I wasn't simply worried about the phone, I remained silent. Ever the showman, Patricia frequently displayed her most recent pricey acquisitions, transforming Sweet Sanctuary into her own runway. "Karen, have a look at this gown." She would exclaim, "Isn't it just darling?" while spinning around in a pricey flowery dress that undoubtedly cost more than our daily earnings. I would respond in a measured tone, "It's nice, but shouldn't we save money to fix the sign outside?" Patricia would dismissively stroke James's face. "That's absurd. The store is doing really well." James would nod in agreement, barely half listening. "Yes, Karen, we're doing great. Don't be too anxious." However, it was precisely my problem. Every time, I did worry. Our financials, which I looked at, revealed a contrasting picture of declining earnings being eaten up by unnecessary spending. Later that week, when we discussed our financial status, I reiterated my suggestion that we exercise caution. James looked at me as though I had suggested selling the shop so I could go to the circus. "A spending plan? Karen, it's not that horrible." "Come on, you're being frugal," he remarked. The word stingy hurt. I was exercising caution, not being frugal. James being clever is more important than being frugal. I emphasized that we should consider Sweet Sanctuary's future, but he appeared indifferent and was already looking at another website for his next purchase. "You're overly concerned," he said, half distracted. "Everything will work out." When Patricia decided we needed more assistance, things became more heated. I was arranging our most recent shipment of candy jars on a Tuesday, which was our inventory day, when she entered the room, accompanied by a young female who was barely 20. "This is Lisa, Karen," Patricia said with a flourish. "This is Karen, my son's assistant, Lisa, my love." I stood up straight and used my apron to wipe my hands. I kindly corrected, "Nice to meet you, Lisa, but I'm the co-manager here." Lisa's grin was courteous yet aloof. "You've been talked about a lot. I can't wait to join the team." I could see from Patricia's arrogant look that she hadn't discussed this employment with James. "What precisely is Lisa going to help with?" I inquired in a kind manner. "Yes, she will assist with the business aspect of things." "After all, you can only do so much," Patricia said, glancing dismissively at my inventory sheets. I nodded, but I felt both confused and worried. "All right, I'll have to get her up to speed because we have a system here." It soon became clear that Lisa's concept of assistance involved more observation than active involvement. I was startled to learn the wage Patricia had approved for her. "May we speak, James?" Later at the workplace, I questioned him. He asked without raising his eyes from his computer, "Sure, what's up?" "It has to do with Lisa." I clarified that her pay was higher than what we could afford for her position. When James did glance up, his face was concerned. "It was all right," Mom remarked. "She believes Lisa will contribute much." I let out a sigh, like if I were talking to a wall. The difficulties at Sweet Sanctuary were growing, and it was getting harder and harder to prevent our lovely haven from going bad. James shrugged, which is all too often his behavior these days, even though we had agreed to talk about new employment together, particularly their pay. "The done is the done. His mother feels good about her," he said. I had to suppress my reaction out of frustration. We couldn't balance our accounts by depending on goodwill. While James and his mother appeared to parade through the company wearing blindfolds, I exited his office, the only one who seemed to be cognizant of the warning signs. I've always been careful, sometimes checking things 3 times, especially when it comes to numbers. I once discovered an envelope hidden in the back of a file cabinet while looking for a lost invoice. I thought it was simply another forgotten bill, but when I opened it, my heart fell. There was a single paper with Sweet Sanctuary listed as collateral, and the amount was far higher than our little business could afford. I yelled, "James," and carried the papers inside his disorganized office. He looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of shame in his eyes. I said, "What is this?" "Oh, that?" he answered casually. "It's nothing, just a small loan I took out for store improvements." "Improvements to the store?" I said it again incredulously. The store could be renovated 9 times with this amount. For what purpose did you really utilize it? The truth was allowed to settle uneasily between us during a tense wait. With caution, he started, "Look, I may have used some of it for the house, the one I've been renovating for us." "For us?" Disbelief intensified my tone as I repeated. "Or for your devices and other things you've been squandering money on." His chair scraped back like a judge's gavel, demanding order as he got up, but all I could feel was my fury building. "Karen, it's not like that. You don't realize that everything will work out in the end." I gave a head shake. "No, James. I don't understand why you took out a loan against the shop without notifying me. How could you have acted so carelessly?" Patricia came in before he could respond, her face bitter as she saw the papers in my grasp. "What is all of this?" she insisted. I interrupted James as he began to explain, shoving the loan documents in her direction. "Were you aware of this?" She waved the papers away, hardly even looking at them. "Naturally, I did. James is only doing the essential actions for our future. Who are you to ask him questions? After all, you are only the assistants." Although her remarks hurt, they gave me more resolve. "Just the assistants," I answered in a firm, steady voice. "You two have been treating the store like your personal bank account, but I've been keeping it afloat." Patricia appeared to be about to explode, and James's face became white. She started to say, "You ungrateful little," but I cut her off with unexpected composure. Not appreciating the effort someone is putting into this business is ungrateful. Risking everything for a house we don't even need is stupid. Captured in their crimes, they were unable to speak. With the papers in my hand like an awaiting verdict, I walked out of the room. Later that day, the kitchen table, which is often used for informal meals, was the scene of a serious conversation, more akin to a council of war than a conversation about a candy store. James avoided making eye contact as he cleared his throat. "We must discuss the future of the store," he stated. With my hands folded on the table, I took a seat and prepared to tackle the problems we had long neglected. Patricia's manner became severe as I sat at the table and faced the hard reality of our circumstances. "Karen, we must be practical. The store's earnings are insufficient to pay off the obligations. Somewhere we must find money." Her use of the pronoun "we" raised red flags since it seemed to suggest that I was the one responsible. "What do you recommend?" I asked, trying not to become upset. Her eyes flickered with a calculating coldness. "You have that inheritance from your parents. It could clear the debts and stabilize the store." I was taken aback, feeling like I was talking to a stranger, not the mother of the man I married. "You want me to use my parents' money, the money intended for my personal security?" I asked incredulously. James chimed in, "It's not like you're doing anything else with it." "And what about our security?" Patricia interjected sharply, implying that my funds should be a familial resource. I looked between them, my heart sinking. "I am part of this family, but it feels like you only acknowledge that when you need something from me." James shifted uneasily. "It's not like that, Karen, but we're struggling here." "So you expect me to just hand over my future?" I questioned, disbelief coloring my tone. Patricia leaned in, pressing her point. "If you care about this family—" Yes, I thought about all the long hours and sleepless nights I had spent trying to keep the store afloat. "If I do this, if I use my inheritance, 1/3 of the store, I want to be an official co-owner." The room fell silent, then Patricia laughed dismissively, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "You a co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then find another way to cover your debts because my inheritance is not your emergency fund." James' expression was unreadable, but Patricia's face flushed with anger. "You let this family business fail." "I've tried to save it," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "But I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm." That night, a nagging feeling pulled me back to sweet sanctuary. The shop was dark, as expected, but a faint glow from the back office suggested otherwise. I pushed the door open. The usual comforting tinkle of the bell now sounded almost ominous. The sweet scent of candy, once reassuring, now seemed thick with deception. As I neared the back, the murmurs from the office grew louder. Through the partly open door, I saw James, his arms around Lisa, the new assistant, who giggled at something he whispered. I pushed the door fully open, and they sprang apart, their faces morphing from shock to guilt in an instant. "Karen," James straightened his shirt and stuttered. "Really, it's not what it looks like." Because it appears that I just saw my husband encircling another woman with his arms. Lisa dodged my stare as she messed with her hair. At midnight, we were just reviewing inventory. I said icily, "With the inventory in your arms." James begged with his eyes. "Please stop making this seem so ridiculous, Karen." I laughed a little, without humor. The trust and collaboration I believed we shared were destroyed, and the icy silence that descended upon me was evident. As far as I could see, everything seemed obvious. I stopped him with a raised hand as he took a stride in my direction. "James, save it. I'm not sure which is worse, your infidelity or the weak falsehoods." At last Lisa found her voice, albeit a small one. "I apologize, Karen. I never intended for any of this to occur." I looked at her innocent, young face, caught in the web of a guy who can't take responsibility for his actions. "James, you should start looking for a job, and you should be sorry," I said. James objected immediately. "She cannot be fired for this." My resolve was unwavering. "I will and I can. I'll be getting in touch with a lawyer tomorrow." He became pale. "Please, Karen, let's talk about this." "There's nothing more to talk about," I cut in abruptly. "You must now live with the decisions you have made." I walked out of the room without waiting for his response, my head held high as his cries faded behind me. In stark contrast to the heaviness of our home, the next morning was brilliant. My phone buzzed as I sat at the kitchen table after spending the night at my apartment, a place I kept up for rent. James had left a message. Curiosity won out despite the temptation to ignore it. It was an image of a bank letter requesting prompt payment. "We need to talk. This is serious," he typed beneath it. On my way, I answered, ready to face whatever was ahead. James and Patricia were already at the confectionery, pacing anxiously when I arrived. Patricia was the first to see me, and her face darkened. As I walked in, she said, "You decided to come, didn't you?" I gave her a frown as I nodded. "You wanted to speak." James gave the letter to me. "We risk losing everything. The bank is on us hard." I read the letter again, unnerved but not surprised by the numbers. "So what are you going to do?" Patricia gave me a fierce look. "If you had simply assisted us when we asked, we wouldn't be in this mess." I turned to James and ignored her. "How are you going to proceed?" He ran a hand through his hair and seemed discouraged. "Maybe you could use your inheritance to pay for it," I said. I laughed bitterly. As I previously stated, I cannot pay this bill without having a stake in the company. Patricia moved forward. "Karen, you're acting irrationally. This company is run by a family." With forced composure, I accepted her challenge. "And when your son was misusing our money and hiring his friends for fun, where was this family?" James looked down as he opened his lips to speak, but then stopped. I went on, "You don't get to play the family card just when it's convenient. We'll have to come up with another plan." "You'll have to," James said. Patricia suddenly smiled, but it wasn't a nice one. "I'll look, but you're out if you're not contributing. Without you, we'll get along. You've been fired." I gazed at her, waiting for the stillness to subside before grinning back at her. "All right." Their surprise was nearly comical. "Like that?" "Is that true?" inquired James. "Absolutely," I affirmed. "I want you to know that I have carefully collected the proof. I kept a thorough record of every penny wasted and took pictures of your interactions with Lisa. You are gravely incorrect if you believe you can ignore me and put this disaster behind you." "You wouldn't dare," Patricia answered, her grin wavering. "Yes, but I would. And I'll take my well-deserved accomplishments with me when I depart. Let's see if you can convince the bank that the company is failing without its true cornerstone." It had been several months since I had entered Sweet Sanctuary. Since then, my life had fallen into a new rhythm. The lovely smell had given way to the rustle of papers, the soft hum of work, and conquering obstacles. My phone rang as I sat in my new, tidy office, a world apart from the tumultuous storeroom of the confectionery. The caller ID illuminated with Angela's name. She was a former shop coworker, and it was the only link I had to that aspect of my history. "What's new, Angela?" Knowing that updates from Sweet Sanctuary usually brought back memories, I greeted with a hint of trepidation. "Have you not heard?" Angela's voice was a mixture of discomfort and sympathy. "Last week, the store closed. It and even their home were foreclosed upon by the bank. I experienced an unexpected wave of relief." "How are things going for James and his mom?" There was a moment's silence. "Unfortunately, not well. They now reside with his aunt. They haven't been very visible." As the news hit in, I said, "Thanks for informing me, Angela." "Karen, everyone knew you were the lifeblood of that place," she said after hesitating. "After you went, things just weren't the same." My lips formed a little melancholy grin. "I appreciate you expressing that. What about you? Have you discovered anything new?" "Yes, I'm now at a downtown bakery. It's a start, but it's hardly Sweet Sanctuary." "Angela, that's wonderful to hear. You've always been good at baking, so I'm confident you'll succeed." Before hanging up, we spoke for a few more seconds. There was a knock at my door as I looked out the window at the busy street below. My assistant said, "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here." Ready to get rid of the final remnants of memories, I said, "Thanks, send them in." A pair entered with anxious expressions regarding their business. I was excited by the new challenge as I got up to welcome them. As they sat down, the wife remarked, "We've heard great things about you, Karen. They claim that you are the best crisis manager in the area." I grinned, comfortable with the recognition. "I'll do my best to fulfill that. Tell me about your company now, and we can discuss how to get things back on track." My mind was racing with solutions as they described their problems. Now this was my territory, where every issue had a solution and every obstacle presented an opportunity. A route I had created for myself, one of resiliency, atonement, and fresh starts, was ahead of me, while Sweet Sanctuary, with its bittersweet memories, lay behind. As our talk went on, their initial nervousness gave way to optimistic smiles. They left with fresh energy, and I returned to my work feeling happier than I had in a long time. At that moment, I understood that the most fulfilling successes frequently followed the most difficult obstacles, and that I had the power to influence the future, one conscious step at a time.